they're secret.
They're secret and they're underground. I love the idea of an underground city.
What would you do if you found an underground city underground?
I'd live in it. I'd take all my stuff down there and I would not let anyone know where I was going. And I'd just live my days underground like a little cave dwelling golem.
I'd open a speakeasy.
That's a good idea too.
Make some money.
Yeah.
Starting off our list today, we have the underground of Portland, Oregon in the United States, which I had no idea existed until I started doing research for this video. As it turns out, in 1908, underneath the city of Portland, tunnels were used for, well, illegal activities. While those in the know accessed the tunnels through secret entrances, those who weren't so lucky often entered them through trap doors hidden all over the city. These less fortunate entrances were placed in the ground floors of hotels, in alleyways, and in bars. Those who fell through them would often fall directly into a cage, and they would either be robbed or taken captive. The problem grew significantly between 1850 and 1941. The tunnels known as the Shanghai Tunnels were intricately connected catacombs, extending for miles underneath the city, making them perfect for transporting people against their will to hidden locations where they were either sold into slavery or adult work. Today, you can tour the dingy underground of Portland's Shanghai Tunnels at a cost of just $15 per person. But considering the poor reviews posted on TripAdvisor, I'd say if you want to see them that badly, you're better off finding a way to explore them yourself. But also don't do that, because as I said, they go on for miles and you could easily get lost in them and you might lose your life. So maybe just pay the $15.
Next up, we have the Edinburgh Vaults. This place was as ominous back in the day as it looks. As Obi-Wan Kenobi would say, you will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Do you get that reference, Anna?
No, I don't get any references.
Hannah doesn't get our references, we don't get hers. It's an interesting dichotomy. Anyway, beneath the streets of Scotland's capital are a series of underground chambers and tunnels that were constructed in the late 18th century. They were built for storage and workshops for businesses operating above ground. But because of poor construction and drainage issues, the vaults quickly fell into disuse and they became a forgotten underworld beneath the city, but not forgotten to everyone. The dimly lit chambers were the perfect place for all sorts of nefarious activity. The vaults became this haven for all this illicit activity: gambling, smuggling, body snatching. These body snatchers were known as resurrectionists. They'd store corpses down there before selling them off to medical schools and God knows who else. Sounded like quite the party there below Scotland.
Next up, we've got the underground city of Havre, Montana, located in, well, Havre, Montana, not to be mistaken with Hannah Montana. You know who that is, right?
I do know Hannah. I'm familiar with.
You never watched Hannah Montana?
I haven't watched it, no.
Oh my god! It's known as Havre beneath the streets. The winding underground catacombs are made up of a series of passageways, as they often are, and they were filled with thriving businesses. There were saloons, laundromats, dental offices, drugstores, and even a brothel. For an underground city, it was pretty above board. Well, kind of, but also not really, because along with a few legitimate businesses, the tunnels were also used for the transportation of alcohol during Prohibition, as well as to transport young women taken from their families to be sold into the trade. What was once a secret city that no one was supposed to know about is now open to the public for tours, and unlike the Shanghai Tunnels of Portland, the Havre Beneath the Streets tours actually have some pretty good reviews. So next time you're in Portland, think about checking them out.
During the Cold War, a massive underground bomb shelter was built in Beijing. It's sometimes referred to as the Underground Great Wall, having been built for military defense. The place is incredible. It was built between 1969 It was built between 1969 and 79 in preparation for the looming threat of nuclear war at the time. It spans around 85 square kilometers, or about 33 square miles, and it was designed to house up to 300,000 people. The complex includes this web of tunnels connecting various parts of the city, from residential neighborhoods to government buildings. It's got everything a small city would need too: hospitals, schools, theaters and shops, a roller skating rink. The complex even had its own water wells and ventilation systems. There were even places designated for growing food. Access points to this underground city were hidden in plain sight. At one time, there were about 90 entrances hidden in shops along the main street. Only a few entrances remain today, though, but you can visit. There are tours of certain areas of the underground city, which has been described as dark, damp, and genuinely eerie, which is to be expected. I mean, it's an underground city. What do you want?
Next up on our list today, we have Moscow's hidden underground and the Library of Ivan the Terrible, which Russia has done an incredibly good job at keeping secret because, well, it hasn't been found yet. The library is located somewhere in Moscow's underground labyrinth of tunnels and secret passageways. While at one point the search for the library and all of its priceless artifacts and pieces of literature was ongoing, it was called off due to the damage being caused to the city's foundations. Now, while excavators didn't manage to locate the library, they didn't come up entirely empty-handed. In the tunnels located underneath two of the Kremlin towers located in Moscow's city center, explorers found the dungeons in which Ivan the Terrible had imprisoned Prince Andrei Khovansky. The punishments the prince and other prisoners would have endured during their time being held captive would have included being bound, gagged, and chained to a stone wall, as well as other gruesome things. While the search for the library has been put on pause, many people, including myself, are still holding out hope that it will one day be found. Because history is cool, and that would be pretty neat.
The underground city of Naours in France. Naours is a small village in northern France with a population of about 1,200, but just east of the small village is an underground city, which at one time had a population about 3 times bigger. The caves were carved by hand in the Middle Ages. The tunnels and chambers extend for about 2 miles, and there are over 300 rooms. It was the perfect safe haven for villagers seeking shelter from invasions. It's a pretty dark and gloomy place, but people could stay hidden down there for long periods. There were areas for livestock, there were water wells, places for the community to gather. There were also bakeries, and in order to keep the underground complex hidden, the chimneys from the ovens were routed through the chimneys in homes and buildings above ground. The complex was rediscovered in 1887, and during both World Wars, soldiers occupied it. In World War I, a lot of soldiers, particularly from the Australian and British forces, left behind graffiti and carvings, which at the time would be considered vandalism, but looking back now, it's pretty fascinating to see all the names and dates and messages from soldiers etched into the walls.
Next up, we have the UK's secret underground city built during the Cold War era between 1940 and 1942, and fully equipped with a 4 million kilometer long labyrinth of bomb-proof tunnels and communication lines. The tunnels were built 130 feet below ground for the purpose of protecting the government and the people of London in the case of a nuclear strike on London, and they came fully equipped with bunkers, food, and medical supplies. When the nuclear strike never came and the government realized just how much money they had spent on something they were never going to use, they converted the tunnels into UK government top secret bunkers where Ian Fleming, believed to be the inspiration for James Bond, worked for some time. While the majority of the tunnels remain off limits to civilians, there are some tours that provide access to certain underground bunkers, which, you know, it's still pretty cool in my opinion.
Throughout Europe, there are mysterious tunnels called Erdstall Erdstall Tunnels. We still don't know exactly what these tunnels were used for or who built them. Most date back to the Middle Ages and are typically narrow and low, often just wide enough for one person to crawl through. Inside, you can find chambers and sometimes steps or seating areas carved into the rock. You'll also commonly find small, tight openings connecting different sections. Anyone passing through needs to squeeze and wriggle their way between the chambers. Some historians think these tunnels may have been used as hiding places for villagers during raids or war. They could have also just been storage spaces. A lot of historians also think they may have been used for religious or spiritual practices, but there aren't a whole lot of artifacts found in these tunnels, so it's hard to pinpoint their exact purpose, and I think that's kind of cool.
Next up, we have the ATM Cave located in Belize, a sacred place for the Mayans during the Classic period, which took place from 250 to 909 AD. I would say there are two main things that the Mayans were known for. One being incredibly intelligent, creating highly advanced calendars and amazing artwork and architecture. And two, being incredibly brutal. They often partook in some pretty gruesome practices, many of which involved the sacrifice of the young. Sacrifices which often took place inside of sacred caves that the Mayans believed were the entrance to the underworld where the gods lived. Caves like the ATM in Belize. I take it you see where I'm going with this. People have died there in some pretty unsavory ways. The most famous person to die in the cave is not someone who we know the name of, but it's someone who a lot of people go there to see. It is the Crystal Maiden, whose skewed limbs and bones became crystallized into the rock over many centuries. If you would like to visit the historical site, you can, but unfortunately due to an incident in which a person dropped their camera inside of the cave and damaged one of the artifacts, cameras are strictly forbidden from joining the experience, but that's okay, because live in the moment. Go see dead people inside of a cave.
This final one is nuts. Not only is it a full-on underground city, but it's a multi-level underground city. And it's ancient. I'm talking about Derinkuyu underground city in Turkey. This underground city extends about 280 feet below the surface and could accommodate up to 20,000 people, along with their livestock and food supplies. It was constructed around the 8th to 7th centuries BCE, and it's a pretty incredible feat of engineering with multiple levels connected by this maze of tunnels. Each level had its own purpose. There were living quarters, kitchens, storage rooms, chapels, ventilation shafts were placed to keep the air fresh, and wells to make sure there was a steady supply of water. One of the coolest things about it, though, is its defense system. The city had massive stone doors that could be rolled across passageways to block invaders, and the doors could only be opened from the inside. The city had communal spaces, there were areas for worship, there have also been rooms that archaeologists think could have been schools. People were able to survive down here for long periods of time.
I heard it was discovered when a man was chasing a chicken and it got through a hole in his basement, so he knocked the wall down. And then he found a secret city.
That's like a bizarre version of Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. James would not have told anyone he found the secret city. He would have moved all of his stuff down there and never spoken to anyone again. Yeah,
well, I'd come out occasionally to freak people out. I'd probably be really pale. Well, with all of that said, folks, we're gonna catch you in the next video.